Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the latest episode of the Comic Book Workshop um, playlist that I have here on YouTube. Today I'm going to be looking at the artist Paul Pope, and we're going to be looking at some of the creative decisions that he's made and some of his illustrations. So I'm going to share some of my own insights as a comic artist into the decision-making process that Paul Pope uh, uses, probably unconsciously because he's very talented. And we're going to see if by analyzing and observing a couple of things that he does, if that can help us become better comic artists ourselves, right? So one of the things that is that I think a lot of people appreciate about Paul Pope is he has a very unique style, and we'll get into the stuff that he did on Batman here, maybe closer towards the end, because I think that's where we see the biggest style differentiation between how Paul Pope draws versus the way it is that most other people would draw Batman, right? But if we really want to understand how it is that he's able to work in the style that he's able to, we want to look at some other drawings that aren't necessarily oriented towards one particular character, but are more geared towards the kind of problems that Paul Pope has to solve whenever he's designing a image. So take this image for example. You know, he either came up with the brief on his own. I'm not sure what book this is from. This may be from something he did himself. But regardless, he would have some sort of a brief, such as a nighttime rave or party with the moon kind of hanging in the background. And he might have had a couple of different ideas before he jumped in there, but we can see as we begin to break things down, we can see that there's definitely some decision making that is going on that is helping him organize all of this busyness here. For one thing, the first thing that is that we see, which I'm going to turn on another layer that has some what looks like a bunch of random red lines on it. All right, so we've got these red lines, and what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to follow kind of like the leading lines of where your eye is generally going to look. And what it is that I've noticed is that generally we tend to look where other people are looking, right? And so there's this really nice contrast point here. For one thing, it's I don't know if this is like an, a star or what this is, but that definitely caught my eye. But there's these two competing spaces, I guess you could say, or not competing, but you could say they work together in order to create the illustration, and that is this big empty black space, and then all of this very busy white and black space that's here with all of these different figures. And in order to keep this image from looking too busy, Paul would need to do something along these lines. He needs to pick what is going to be the dominant shade that basically sits in the background. And he's chosen black, right? And this allows him to block out basically a lot of the top portion and then to really direct our eyes where he wants us to look. But it's curious that I have this tendency when I look at this image that what it is that we see first over here on the right is this woman peering backwards. And she's peering backwards at this man who's just kind of idly sitting on the guardrail there, just overlooking the city, not really impressed by the party. And so I feel like that might not be the focal point, but it's an interesting element of storytelling that's going on here. Because to me, when I look at this image, what I see is I see the woman trying to get the attention of the guy who's not really interested in anything in the party. He's a little aloof, right? That's got her attention. Or maybe she's just also kind of gazing back at the moon here. It could be either one. Um, but that's what's interesting about it is that when you consider these sorts of things, when you're creating an image like this, the viewer is allowed to generate a lot of stories all on their own just by observing these things. But if I kind of follow that same thinking process and I just kind of draw in these curves of the general gesture of these other figures, we start to see something really interesting. For example, the gesture of the woman here over here on the left, if I draw a curve to go along with the curve of her face, we can see it's aimed towards this other woman's face, but this other woman's face, the curve is also facing towards the other lady, right? And so with their two bodies, they're kind of creating this kind of like, let me see if I can get get rid of some of this, right? They're kind of creating this counterbalancing curves here in a sense. And this keeps your eye from going off the page completely, right? It's like if we had a character's limbs that was just pointing this way, but there was nothing that was kind of set up as a boundary here, our eyes would just go this direction and we would wonder to ourselves, well, is she pointing at something? Is it off screen? Right? So this is kind of a way it is that that comic artists can use the positioning of the heads in order to kind of keep your attention where they want it, right? So we see the same thing here with these characters, right? If a character is looking off the screen, if they're looking off this way, we can see that they also have a head that's looking back at them, right? So it feels more natural. It feels like these characters are in some sort of a conversation here. But it also acts as a kind of like I said, as a border to keep your eye from going too far off the page. Everything in the image is kind of designed to keep your eye bouncing around this particular image, right? And we even see it here down on the bottom with these tables, right? He's using these circular elements of these tables on either side to kind of create this interesting effect, right? It's kind of creating this border effect. And notice that, like I said before, the black space here, it kind of creates that same border effect, right? And then again, we can see the same thing, even with the DJ up here, we have this kind of counter opposite form on either side that is these ladies dancing. And so there's kind of like these gestures that kind of go, they kind of go back and forth throughout the image. And I think that that's pretty useful, right? It's a pretty useful thing to understand. So we'll go ahead and we'll flip through some of the Batman stuff. I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time on here. There's other drawings I want to look at of his, but I do appreciate the way that he draws Batman, and I think it's very unique. It's got a retro vibe to it, but at the same time, it kind of has this punk rock kind of aesthetic to his drawing, and you can tell that he's doing the stuff traditionally, and he's got like a very well trained hand with this ability to draw this level of detail and for it to look so crisp. I mean, the hand here, the way that the hand is popping this, I'm guessing it's kind of like a grappling hook or something. The way that his hand is popping this out, I think it's very elegantly done, very well done. Yeah, and so what I really appreciate about his work and something that I find is very difficult to do is that he has this kind of mix between an abstract style and I guess you could say, a representative style. He knows how to draw something such as a motorcycle in various perspectives with a character on top of it. And you can clearly see he's not cheating anything, you know. He seems to be really aiming for the shots that are pretty difficult. I mean, this is a very exaggerated perspective that he has going on here. and he can even change the perspective, and it almost feels like a camera of a movie, like a movie camera or something, right? The way that this perspective on this tire changes, and we see the other figure here, and just really good visual acting in the sense that we've got this close up on the thug as he starts to have this realization, and Batman is jumping off of the side of this building with his motorcycle. Right. I love the colors that he uses in the work that he did for Batman. You know, I think it's really nice. Again, really cool retro colors. It's got this dirty yellow kind of aesthetic to it that makes it really interesting to look at. Very desaturated colors, and it kind of gives it that sense of it being old, right? Like I said, he has this mix of retro as well as kind of punk sort of thing going on. Yeah, I mean this is a low resolution image, but we can see, he has his own approach to drawing Batman, and I think it's pretty gutsy of him. I wouldn't have imagined that uh, that something like this would have appealed to people, because I know people that do comics like Batman and that sort of thing. For the most part, they kind of want Batman to just be Batman. They don't want this kind of crazy, creepy looking Batman, right? Yeah. So he did a really nice run on Batman, and I think those are pretty interesting. But like I said, the ones that really interest me the most are the visual storytelling it is that he has, and the amount of gesture that he's able to bring to the panel work, right? You've got these two figures that seem to be fighting one another on some sort of floating motorcycles or flying motorcycles. It looks like one of them is trying to get one of them in her crosshairs before she shoots off a shot. And I think this is a really good transition state. And it's something that I really want to bring into my comics. It's something that just feels more cinematic. I think there's a lot of comic stuff out there that says more than it needs to. And so we'll go ahead and we'll close it out with this one. This one was kind of short, but I really appreciate the different types of styles that American comic artists work in. It's interesting to see how different areas kind of have different things going for them. I think in a lot of ways manga beats out traditional American comics, but one of the things that I really appreciate about American comics is that there is a lot of individual expression when it comes to how they draw, how they draw the characters, what kind of color palettes they're using. There's not like a unified style that everybody works in the way it is that it at least is perceived to be that way in manga, right? So that's what I have for you guys today, as far as looking at work on Paul Pope. I hope that was useful to you guys. I'll be having another one of these videos coming up every week. I've also got more information on my own comic, the Philip K. Dick Files, which you can get the digital version of it in the description box below if you're interested. And yeah, so I should have some more videos coming up here soon. I'm getting back into the swing of recording stuff. So, anyways, guys, thank you for watching and take care.